Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 103 of the Whitey and Will Sports Show. Today is Sunday, February 18th, 2024, which means that boys regionals in the state of Illinois are getting underway starting tomorrow. And with that in mind, we have got a twice repeat guest now on the show. We have got the foremost authority on boys basketball in this state, at least as far as I'm concerned and as far as Mike is concerned, Aaron Britton. And you can see on his shirt right there, nestohoops.com. He's the guy to see if you want to know about boys basketball in the state, how teams rank against each other. Aaron, we appreciate you taking the time to get us set for postseason basketball in Illinois. We're there again.
I appreciate the invitation once again. I haven't overstayed my welcome yet, so as
No.
always, it's glad to chat with you guys.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, we always try to find someone smart to bring this conversation. So you're always going to be welcome.
Yikes.
No, people love it when we get Aaron on here, and that's because he spends a lot of time compiling and figuring out what all the boys teams in the state are doing, and that gives us a good idea about how they rank against each other as the postseason gets started. And obviously we in our Effingham area have got some of the top 1A teams in the state getting ready to play into the same sectional. And so why wouldn't we get them on here to talk not just about how what it's looking like for those guys, but also what their path looks like and who they might run into down the road that we're not as familiar with. I think that's kind of where something I want to touch on. Mike, I know you've always got your own agenda here too.
Well, yeah, and I just want to know. I mean, starting probably about Wednesday, you're compiling half the scores you were a week ago.
Well, yeah, even after this morning when I hit save at about 4:45 a.m., there was only like about 20 games yesterday in the whole state, and I was like, it's all downhill from here, boys. I can just rely on ihsa.org to give me all the scores I need, and yeah, plug them in a timely fashion, and 3 weeks from now we'll all be done.
Unfortunately, not all those ADs will input their scores in a timely manner. I find that amazing when you host that you're like, we'll get them in by 11. And there's people out here refresh, dying to see a score somewhere. It's shocking.
Yeah, there's always a couple in the Chicago area that it may be a couple days before they get those scores in there. But hopefully the ones that we're missing we can find on Twitter.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a lot of other avenues to go through these days. Even in our neck of the woods, where you get some of the smaller schools down south, kind of word travels a little slower down that way sometimes. But anymore, it seems like almost every school's got kind of a dedicated, whether it's a media outlet or the school's own social media presence. There's somebody out there that's, for the most part, letting people know. I think this has got to be a lot easier for you now than probably even like maybe 5 years ago.
Absolutely. That's the one, I'll keep saying it. That's the one good thing about getting more followers, because if somebody wins, they're always going to report the score.
Yeah.
You can always count on a few of the teams that are going to lose that may not report the score. So if you have a hard time finding the score, you can make an assumption that this team probably didn't win that game.
Yeah, that's a tangent that I'm going to go on with Mike a little bit later on this show. I didn't tell him that, but I've grown a little frustrated here, and I understand it's a long season. Coaches have to coach a lot of games and do a lot of other stuff on the side, but we're getting that time of year where sometimes it's reporting your score is optional, and especially sending any stats in that, if you lose, maybe you don't do it. And that's frustrating because somebody's grandma still wants to see if they scored 4 points last night, whether you're happy about the way the team's playing or not. But that's
Pretty easy,
a
Whitey.
conversation for another time.
You do. I still remember having my laptop when I got beaten the Olney sectional to Coach Crawford. Before we leave the gym, sent it out, and the way it went, that was it. It's just what you do. All right, Aaron, I have a question. I'm going to start off with questioning before Whitey this. We're changing the things up. This afternoon, I was all set and prepared to go through your sectional predictions, your seating predictions. And then I started, I'm not sure why. I guess it's like driving by a car wreck. I got caught up watching my Hoosiers in their hideous uniforms they were wearing today in Northwestern. So I didn't get a chance to pull these up. How close were you?
Oh, you mean from like my mock seeds? I don't know. I don't actually like go through and see how close I am. I'm not trying to be Joe Lenardi. That's more just how I would vote. I'm definitely not trying to predict how all the coaches in any given sectional or subsectional would vote. But I think, hell, if you just went by the NPI and just sorted that by greatest to smallest, you would probably be 80 to 85% accurate.
Well, and the big thing is, I mean, really the top four is where some of these, I mean, I was looking, you start getting crap seat in some of them. But yeah, it's you start your top four. And from what I could see, I think you obviously hit a lot of number ones right on the head. So that's good. And like I said, it's a testament to you, because there are some situations where a team may not have quite that record because everybody looks at record only. And hey, they've played just like in your rankings. Wait, this team's slightly above 500 in 2A. Why are they getting ranked so high? Well, their schedule they play in the Chicago X League is this, and that's why. So,
and you can get into a whole other ball of yarn. Like if you're ranking 25, like the top 25 teams in 2A, and then if you were to drill down into a subsectional, you may actually rank those teams a little differently than how they lined up in the top 25 because of the head-to-head and how that carries a hell of a lot more weight in those sectionals than it does in the statewide standpoint.
Oh, exactly right. And that's the thing. At least, there is a lot of in the subsection. I remember when it started, there was a lot of complaining. I actually kind of liked it because it was kind of a bigger pool, and you just kind of had to drill down and you should, as a coach, know pretty much about every team in your subsection. I'd say 95% of them do, but not all of them do.
Yeah, I think for the most part, overall, the seeds were pretty close. And there were some individual votes that I saw. I get screenshots of the IHSA matrix for the seeds, and there's still some coaches out there that either one deliberately trying to shaft other teams and coaches, or they just don't care and they just vote by record. And overall, it's still. I didn't have a whole lot of complaints with the seeds. I still am not a fan of the process.
I mean, I've seen coaches try to manipulate who they play. Oh, I want to get to this spot or get that team in that spot, so they're going to be in the other, they're going to be in A or B. And I've seen it happen, and I've seen it backfire on guys too. So,
and that game shouldn't even be allowed to be played. Some guys are always going to play that game, but it's anyway.
Yeah, it happens.
Moving on.
So just out of curiosity, what's the fix there? Do you have an idea for how is it just somebody who's doing something like what you're doing, it's just kind of saying this is the way it should go?
Yeah, I think so. I'm definitely not saying that it should be me. But if you had, it would take a lot more effort. And maybe in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't change the overall picture so drastically that the IHSA would even deem it be worthy to do that. But you would have, there's enough people that are just watching the games that don't care who win, whether it's from an administrative level or from a former administrative level, that are seeing all these teams. And it could be like the college football playoff where you just get together at the end of the season, and I don't know why we seed with 2 weeks left in the season either.
Yeah, especially because there doesn't have to be a meeting anymore. It's all done on the computer these days anyway. So like literally you could, for instance, I know the weather kind of played hell with it a little bit this year. And so we had some Friday games that didn't get played until Saturday, but like there's no reason why you couldn't couldn't have, well, maybe a week before, right? I guess maybe a week
I mean,
before.
I don't see why you couldn't wait. If you wanted to end the season like this last week, if you said, all right, all the games are going to be in by Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
and if we didn't try to play on Friday, which I think a lot of the teams, when they thought we were going to have the same Saturday quarterfinals like we've had the last few years, they were planning on wrapping things up in the middle of the week. And then when they found out that we were going to go back to Monday through Friday regionals, they pushed those back. You get all the games in by Wednesday. You online vote Thursday. The seeds come out Friday. You know who you're playing. You have the weekend to prepare for a regional, and that's it.
You already knew where you were going to go. Like you knew where
Right.
you were going to go and what days you were going to have to go there. So it's really just a matter of finding. Yeah.
Well, and people say, "Oh, I need to know who I'm going to play." You have accessibility to all kinds of video. Plus, you have a pretty good idea. You can narrow it down to I'm going to play one of 3 schools in this first game as a coach. You know those things.
So
any coach out there that's worth their salt has a pretty good scout on everybody in their subsectional.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't think you need 2.5 weeks to prepare for one opponent, but whatever.
So the last time we talked, I can't remember if St. Anthony's boys had gotten to the top of the 1A polls for you yet or not, or if they were just kind of moving their way up. But we
did break that news with Dustin. We got an early tip on that and broke that on the show.
But they've been there a while now, and there's really they've been in no danger of falling out of that because they haven't lost since their Christmas tournament. But I don't know, they continue to just, I mean, sort of back it up on the floor. I think I don't think there's a lot of argument about them being in that top spot.
No, there was online some questions about why they were number one for the first few weeks, because at that time I think Tuscola only had 1 or 2 losses, and it was just people looking at the record, not really looking at the not looking at anything behind the scenes. But yeah, they've been at least on paper, because I haven't seen them. I've seen some clips on film, and I haven't actually sat down and watched an entire game. But at this point, I feel like I'm comfortable with them being number one. It feels like they're starting to separate from the rest of the sectional, and the sectional is still very good.
Yeah.
But, most definitely. Probably the biggest thing I see with them, Aaron, were the problems they cause. Number one, I mean, defensively, they're pretty good. I mean, they've had a few moments this year, and I've seen them only a handful of times, but for the most part, defensively, they're pretty solid. But when you have 3 kids who are all capable of scoring 30 points, and none of them is a big, so it's not like, okay, well, I've got 2 kids who can guard a perimeter type player or a penetrator, we're okay. You got to be able to guard all 3 of them. And then they got other kids who can score and really mess with you. But I think that's the biggest thing is their weapons. They got 3 now. Dustin and I both saw them last week, Tuesday night, and they escaped. Altamont had their chance, and they escaped late. But it's just a case where I think, as long as they don't come out and have a horrendous shooting night, kind of like they did against Altamont, where they didn't shoot it very well. I think they'll be okay, and I think playing at home will help them. I know they've, if you get to this point and you get a face of Tuscola again, I know they've had their number 2 years in a row. I don't know that I would see that again. I've seen both teams play, and Tuscola is really good, but they're a different good.
Yeah, and crazy stuff happens in 1A basketball, especially at the regional level. And St. Anthony played Nokomis a couple of weeks ago in that shootout, and that was, at least on paper, it looked close enough. It may not have been that close in reality, but that's a game that's going to be a regional semifinal.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If they can knock off Stu Strauss in that 4-5 matchup. But that's a game where if you wanted to call an upset special, that could be one. I'm not going to call that. But I just think that some of the wake-up calls that St. Anthony's had down the stretch, including that home game against Altamont, if they were starting to stray the path of focus, that should be enough to get them back on track.
Yeah, and the thing about that Altamont game, which again, just looking at scores, you wouldn't understand it, but also Altamont they were down. I mean, they were down a couple of guys that had been one starter and one guy that had been seeing significant minutes for them, and plus they're without a kid who was starting for them most of the year. So that's not the same Altamont team that they had
It just
to start the year. But
yeah, Johnny had a great game plan, and
yeah,
we'll talk about it later.
yeah,
And
we will.
they executed it extremely well. They really did. And but it's it
So
just didn't get them there.
Is that the Elam kid that's out?
The Elam kid is out and he's not coming back. They were also missing. They were missing Eli Miller.
Miller.
That's right. Yeah. They were missing him, and then a kid off the bench, Ben Radel. Probably their sixth or seventh guy, defensive player mostly. He's not going to pull up points on the board for you, but they had a couple of freshmen that saw some action in that game and did very well. But you're right. Maybe I think it could serve as a wake-up call for St. Anthony. I think the thing that St. Anthony fans have to wonder about is Tuscola or Casey Westfield. I mean, I look at Casey's records specifically, and they're a 500 team, but then I look at their strength of schedule, and they've obviously challenged themselves. They gave T-Town a pretty good game. In fact, after falling behind 11-0 to T-Town, they outscored them the rest of the way in that game. But I don't know. Casey and Tuscola both have pretty solid schedules by the time it's all said and done.
Yep, and that game's at Casey, and I was at round one back before Christmas, and that was a barn burner. And Casey's lost about 4 or 5 games in a row. Well, they've lost 4 in a row, and that it's a backloaded schedule, and there's just not a lot of wins to be had, no matter how good of a team you are. Like they're
right
at T-Town, at Lawrenceville. There's not a whole lot of 1A teams that are going to be winning those games.
No, and you build your schedule, I think, to be tough in the back end. So as you get into postseason, you're not going to see anything you haven't seen yet. And I think that's with St. Anthony's schedule, one of the biggest advantages they've had is they're coming in pretty much have seen everything.
Yep. And whoever, I don't see anyone other than Tuscola or Casey winning that regional. And the first meeting, or the first round of sectional, would be the Edwards County regional winner. And Dietrich's the favorite, but
Dietrich can score. They got kids who can score too. It's just, they played awfully well in that NTC tournament, and really, St. Anthony only had one kid play well, but he played extremely well.
Yes.
But the moving Maroons are they're moving pretty good right now. They've won about 7 games in a row, and they beat a really good Shelbyville team, and Shelbyville's beat Tuscola twice this year.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing with Dietrich right now as they go into the postseason, it seems like they're pretty reliant on hitting threes, and they're pretty streaky, and they can throw a bunch in a hurry. But I have seen them in the last year and a half. I saw them have Altamont in trouble at Altamont 1 or 2 years ago. I guess maybe it was 2 years ago, and then came out and missed like 7 or 8 in a row, and then it was all over.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, they've got 3 really nice players, other kids capable of scoring. It'll be interesting, and I mean, like I said, I think the makings are to have a really, really exciting sectional at St. Anthony, and you can have 3 NTC teams there.
You could. The big team that I think Dietrich needs to keep an eye on is a Christ Star Rock Lutheran. It's another team that, their record's not pretty, and the strength of schedule. I mean, they played a really nice schedule. I don't know if you guys have looked at who they've played and who they've beaten, and who some of their losses are to. They're not nearly the team that they were last year, but they they may end up actually winning a regional this year. And last year they only had 1 or 2 losses all year and got upset by St. Anthony, I believe.
Yep, so Anthony beat him, and
I'm not sure I
you
would
can
have.
tell that. Yeah, I wouldn't turn that one in
I mean, it was
upset
an
watching
upset by
that
the
game
seeds. It was
based
Right.
on the seeds.
Yeah.
But you could tell in that game, Dustin and I did that game on the radio. You could tell in that game strength of schedule played a major role, because when it got nut cutting time, one team was able to keep doing what they'd been doing, and the other team just got out of kilter and just kind of
Yep.
made some mistakes.
Yep, so that was certainly one of those games you could see coming. I was one of the few 1A regionals last year that I predicted accurately.
Attaboy.
So Dieterich's been really moving up the charts for you. Have you had some people say, because listen, they're not. St. Anthony's probably a little bit more of a known commodity across the state than Dieterich is. So I assume that you've probably had people kind of wonder, like, what's the story here? What is this? Is this team really all that good, or what's going on?
Yeah, and then especially at the analytical side of it, how they match up with Altamont on paper. They both have won one really tight game against each other and lost another tight game. And then the Altamont strength of schedule is a little bit better. The Dieterich win over Shelbyville carries a lot of weight with me, because Shelbyville had a slow start coming out of football season, and it was going to be a matter of time before they got it rolling. And I mean, Shelbyville is a really nice 2A team, and they host a sectional, and I don't think they have the horses to actually win that sectional, but they're a team that could win a regional. And for Dieterich to knock them off on a neutral court like that, matters, especially to me. And they've won, I don't know, 15 of 16 games. I think with the only loss coming to St. Anthony in that NTC tournament.
Yeah, you go back to January 5th. They lost at Altamont, they lost at Altamont. I was at that game, and Altamont again they were missing the Elam kid that night. He came back for a while and then was done by the NTC tournament. But Dieterich was playing with Caleb Gephardt banged up a little bit in that game too. So it was kind of, it was sort of an even keel thing. And then when they played again, Dieterich came out on top that time, like you said, and Altamont was full. Both teams were full strength for that one, more or less. So, yeah, Altamont's. I mean, they showed me against St. Anthony the other night. Like, there's a lot there, a lot of gritty team. They really got after it. It'll just be interesting to see if they have to continue to rely on some really inexperienced kids to get extra minutes, if they will be able to put together the run that I think they're capable of. It's just, you never know what you're going to get when you start asking young guys to play a vital role in regional championship games.
Yep, and I feel like John finally has his schedule and his program where he'd like to have it. He's done a really great job over the years of overhauling that schedule, because for a long time they'd be in the St. Elmo tournament. They were playing 3 or 4 different teams, almost 4 or 5 different times, and there was no variability in their schedule, and they'd have all these good wins, or they'd look really nice on paper, but there was no substance to any of those wins.
Yeah, I back in my old newspaper days, I made a couple of people really mad suggesting that in a sectional preview, that they just looking at their schedule. Yeah, they got a nice record, but who do they play? And of course that was just because I was biased, not because I was looking at the numbers. But now, see, now we have
biased
somebody.
now.
Now we have somebody that can look at that stuff and say, yeah, there's a little bit of truth to it.
Well, Aaron, since I know you're on a tight schedule, I'd like to jump to that Shelbyville section.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that.
In 2A.
Oh, and then yeah, we can do that. Ready when you guys are.
That's obviously the one that Teutopolis is in,
Yep. And I do know this. I talked to Dustin briefly before we started. I don't think T-Town is really wanting to go to the Newton Regional. I think they knew it was probably going to happen that way. And that will be, if those two meet, that will be one hell of a ball.
Yeah, because Newton's not afraid of that T-Town jersey.
Oh, and they just beat Olney. What, 17 points the other
Yeah, it
day?
was not
Yeah.
close. It was not
Yeah,
close.
but I think Alney was missing.
Were they missing somebody?
I think they were missing the big kid, the big sophomore. I think he was
Oh,
out.
Coleman was out. I know Winkler had scored 20 some points. I noticed he'd scored. Yeah, so yeah, and no, I know Troy was on that bench with me at T Town when we were with Andy. So yeah, he's there's no mystique. They got him in the Christmas tournament a couple of years ago, so
Right.
there's no mystique there. And these kids were sophomores that year, I believe.
Yep.
I think that'll be a good one. Lawrenceville going to Vandalia. I can already hear Paul Higginbotham, who used to coach at Lawrenceville, pissing and moaning because he had to go to Vandalia years ago when we just started early in the complex, and then Vandalia knocked him off. And yeah, he wasn't a big fan of that.
Well, would he rather go to Vandalia or would he rather go to Newton and play them again?
Oh, it was he's an administrator now. Well, it was the whole thing. It was them and us and T-Town and Olney and Vandalia. There were 5 really good teams in A and B, and Newton. There were 6. And yeah, he just didn't want to go there. I don't think he wanted to go to T-Town. I mean, I got lucky where I went, but I didn't have to go to the other one.
I see you've got Lawrenceville, like as far as their MPI number, they belong where they're at, but their strength of schedule not quite as high as some of those other teams that are in that subsectional feeding into Shelbyville. So I don't know. I haven't seen Lawrenceville. Have you gotten a chance to see much of them on video or anything like that?
I haven't. And the strength of schedule was something that we talked about in our first chat back in November of, how when it gets down to it, Newton's going to have a little more body of work in their schedule, but Newton hasn't quite had the season that I thought they would have, even though it's still been a good season and they can win a regional. But they had the loss to Fairfield before Christmas and a couple other losses. I would have liked to have seen them be in that 24-6 range by now instead of sitting at 20-10. But hosting a regional, they're in about as good a spot as they could have asked for. In Lawrenceville, they won. Well, they haven't lost since the Newton semifinal, Little Illini conference tournament. And they beat Casey by 17. They beat Altamont. They beat Olney. They beat Carmi. Just
they've got some nice wins, and I know they had an adjustment period after they lost their point guard, and I'm pretty sure he was done for the year. He went down in that St. Anthony game, and I know that was a period of adjustment they had to go through. But they've got 3 nice kids who can score for them. The Nichols kid's just so athletic, it's not funny. And the Wolf kid can flat shoot it. And I think the Gear kid kind of gets overlooked inside because he's a very athletic, physical kid.
I like Gear the most.
Yeah, he's a very nice, physical, athletic kid inside. And I think if those two meet, and as Dustin and I have said almost on a weekly basis, that T-Town's defense is always going to travel. It just depends on which offensive team shows up. The one who will play with confidence and look to score, or the one that doesn't look to score other than Mr. Gaddis. And then it's just like, hey, let's just, come on, clock, keep running. That's going to be the difference in the ballgame.
Yeah. Well, the 2 teams that come south into this sectional, which really provide a lot of depth and add a whole lot of intrigue, are the SJO and Unity teams. And they're going to be favored in their regionals. Unity's been sucking air the last week and a half. They had a really hot start, and maybe some of the conference opponents starting to figure them out a little bit. So they got a tough semifinal game against Monticello, and Monticello just knocked them off about a week ago. And that was at Monticello, and they got to go back there just to win a regional. So that's going to be a challenge for them. And even in the regional final, it'd be Warrensburg or Maroa Forsyth, 2 teams that definitely have a pulse.
No, that's good. You're right there. Tolono beating T-Town at T-Town. Their young kids impressed a lot of people. I didn't get to go to that game. I talked to some guys who were there, and they got some sophomores who really could play. And I think they beat Tuscola like right around that same time frame in there. They had a couple real good wins. I mean, heck, they're coming to our Christmas tournament next year. That's how impressed we were. But,
Yeah, they started out 18-0, went down to T-Town early to that T-Town game was a long time ago.
yes.
And it matters, but it was on December 2nd.
Yeah.
And we're a long way from there. So they got their work cut out for them getting out of that regional. I like the sectional semi of potentially having Lawrenceville and St. Joe Ogden. The two teams that can really get them down the floor and put up a lot of points. That'll be one of those games where, which team can lock in for a 3 or 4 minute stretch on defense and get to a sectional final.
Well, and I just don't ever bet against Randy Bishop. That's my slogan tonight. I coached Randy, good friend of mine, coached against him several years. And he's got Jenkins is the kid's name. That's for them. It's just I've just heard so many tremendous things about how he plays.
He's dunking on people, and
oh yeah, he's very athletic. But you could see it last year in that sectional game. Randy just didn't have. Well, T-Town also had a lot of other kids who could score. That was the issue last year. He kind of had to roll the drums and junk it up a little on defense, and Garrett Gaddis showed up and scored almost 30 points against him, and that was, that was the night. But yeah, don't ever bet against Bish. He's got some skills, and
I look at that St. Joe Ogden team though, and not only have they played one of the toughest schedule, I mean the third toughest schedule in 2A, but I mean still 24-6. That's the thing. Like, it's not just, hey, this is who we played. Maybe we lost a few more games than we would like, but hell, they're winning 80% of their games too. So,
and I think didn't T-Town get them at St. Joe?
Yes.
Yep.
That was in what?
No,
January?
that was at T-Town.
Pinckneyville got T-Town. Okay.
Yeah, Pinckneyville went up there and beat St. Joe Ogden in their own shootout.
Yeah.
It would have been about 2 or 3 days before that T-Town game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, they lost those back to back, and then since then they've won. It looks like maybe 11 out of 13 down the stretch, including recently in overtime. So
they're always going to have a really good collection of kids, man. I mean, that's just. I remember when we got them on the schedule when I was at T-Town. I mean, that was, playing them and Breeze Central were both like inter squad games back then.
Yep, and they graduated arguably the best player that program's ever had last year in Ty Pence. He was a 4-year starter for them, and he's at Illinois State now. So he was the only starter that they lost, but they relied so heavily on him to do a lot of the heavy lifting last year, and I knew what they had coming back. I just wasn't so sure how those kids are going to develop, and they've developed in a big way. There's a lot of continuity in that offense, and there's not a whole lot of bulk in those kids, but there's quickness. There's basketball players. They've had a really nice year.
Yeah, they have. And again, that sectional's at Shelbyville. And Shelbyville's over at aren't they at Vandalia? Or no, they're at the other. They're one of those.
Shelbyville's at St. Joe Ogden. So that's probably going to be your regional title game right there.
Right. So who else is at Lawrenceville or at Vandalia with Lawrenceville?
Fairfield. Flora. Robinson, Vandalia, and Cumberland. So the Fairfield and Flora, that's going to be a rock fight, and then Lawrenceville's, they're going to have to flex their muscles a little bit and pull away from either Fairfield or Flora, because you don't want to get into a half-court possession game with either one of those teams.
No, and that's knowing both of those coaches, that's what they want. They want to play chess.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, well, Scott McElraby's been one of the favorite coaches of mine for going on 20 years now. That dude he gets the most out of his kids every year at Fairfield.
Yeah, really. You look at this Shelbyville sectional, and every potential regional championship game looks like a hell of a ball game. I mean, there's some really intriguing matchups there from this regional final on.
Yep, and that's one of the few bright spots I like every 2 years the IHSA will just shift things geographically. It's like they just turn the clock a little bit on the state, but SJO and Unity dumping down into this sectional, it just does a world of opportunities for this thing. For years it's been T-Town and anybody else, and no matter how good of a year you've had, you still got to beat T-Town in the sectional, and it's still that way this year. But there's a lot more teams that could actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember, when we ran into Breeze Central back-to-back years in sections.
Yeah.
And, played them at Greenville, I don't know, double overtime, and then beat them at Vandalia. But it's for everyone's sake, it's a good thing that Central's the other half of that Carbondale super side. Because, you don't want to run into them.
No, and well, back in the early days of the 4-class ball, they used to split that Carbondale super north and south, and Breeze would roll into that, and Alton Marquette would roll into that northern sectional, and it'd be T-Town, and Robinson would have a good team. And for the last few years, they've gone east and west, and on the east side, they've really gone up to Champaign to get teams down into that Carbondale super.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. When you see you're together, you almost think, oh, we're going up through Springfield. No.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. And then I got another question for Aaron.
Yours is more important than mine, but we need to be mindful.
Well, that's what I mean. I was going to say, I had one last question for you, Aaron. Eastern getting the super back. What are your thoughts on that?
That was what I was going to talk about anyway.
Great minds think alike, Whitey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's probably a move that needed to happen. I know people in the Deep South don't like it, but geographically, Carbondale's just way too south. It's not fair at all to Meridian, or for making Meridian and Tuscola and traveling.
Well,
they're traveling 3 hours for a super sectional, and they got a half-hour drive to state.
Well, and I almost wonder if now 1A goes back to Carbondale next year and 2A's at Charleston next year. I think that is and again, it makes too much sense. So that's probably not what they're going to do, but I think that would be awesome, because attending an incredible amount of super sectionals at Charleston. I like the venue much better in Carbondale. It's more intimate. It's louder. Crowds get into it more than they do down at Carbondale, just because it's not as big a building.
Yeah, I'd be fine with both of them going up to Eastern, and I do love the idea of double headers for the super sectional Monday now. But yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. It makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, Aaron, we promised you half an hour, and we're almost 10 minutes past that already. But
I'm probably not going to get grounded too bad.
Yeah, but we do appreciate it. A lot of insight, and we always love it when you come on. Mike and I have got lots of other crap to talk about, but we'll give you a chance to get on with your evening. But again, thank you for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing what you got to say about the rest of the season.
Sounds good, guys. Always outstanding to chat with the both of you.
All right. Enjoy and avoid the withdrawal symptoms here in about 3 weeks.
I've got an idea for that already. I'm going to start watching The Wire again. I've already got it.
Oh man,
queued up on HBO. As soon as the day after the state finals, I'm just going to roll right into it, and that'll keep me out of depression for a few weeks, and then hopefully it'll be NBA playoffs by the time that wraps up.
I'm not sure of watching The Wire to not be depressed. I'm trying to think. There's some parts of that that's a little counterproductive, I would think. But it's entertaining, so I guess
when you have your tweets about The Wire, I'm always like, I don't have a clue what he's freaking talking about, because I've never watched The Wire. So
if you watch enough TV, you should just you owe it to yourself. It's only like 60 episodes long, so it's not something that goes 10, 15 seasons. There's 12 episodes per season. Knock it out over the summer, and you'll say, you know what? Aaron doesn't know what he's talking about at all.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one.
I didn't need that confirmed. I already knew that part. I didn't need that confirmed.
I'm in the middle of the Sopranos rewatch myself,
okay.
But The Wire might come next. So
yeah, I finished that one up last summer. That one's like every 3 or 4 years, and then I usually was watching The Wire about every year, but I was able to put it down for almost 2 years now, and that's the longest I've gone with it for.
It's funny. It's funny how
years.
dated they are, but how well they still hold up, like, I mean, the entire premise of, especially the first season of The Wire, like payphones and beepers and shit like that, like people don't even know what those are anymore, but they're so good that they
See,
still.
I still got to find a way to watch my last season of Peaky Blinders. I just, when they made the last, they had 2 year gap, and then I never got into it again.
Well, you need to.
I know
worth
it's
your time.
there. I just have to do it.
All right, pop culture chat is over. We're gonna let Aaron get out of here, but thanks again, buddy.
All right, Dustin, Mike, adios.
All
Thanks,
right.
Aaron.
That's
Hip,
Aaron
hip.
Britton. Check out nestahoops.com. Get a spreadsheet every week during the basketball season. It's the good stuff. We
Oh, it's
look at
awesome.
we look at it a
It's,
ton. We look at it a ton. Of
oh,
course,
yeah.
Mike, just on last week's show, I was complaining about the 3A Girls Associated Press poll and about how, despite the fact that Taylorville had held court and beaten Effingham and Mount Zion every opportunity during the season, they were still ranked behind the two of them. Well, then in 3A regionals come through, and guess what? Mount Zion and Effingham are both regional champions, and Taylorville is not. So maybe somebody knew what they were doing, or maybe they got lucky.
They got lucky. That's just wrong place, wrong time. It depends on where you're at. It's like the old days where you would have, I think it was the Florida Regional that had 8 teams and 7 of them had 20 wins and 7 of them could have won state that year. When you saw all the teams, that'd have been a great half of the state tournament. Pick 4 of them, and it's location, where you go, where you make the trip. But yeah, and I'd listened to you guys do the Effingham 3A game on the radio. I was a loyal listener. You did all but wrap it up there in that first overtime. You about put a bow on it.
Effingham, let me just put it this way. Okay, Effingham beat Centralia in double overtime to win its regional down at Salem. This is girls we're talking about here. And listen, they probably shouldn't have won. Okay. They were down 2 points with 5 seconds to go, and Centralia had the ball. All they had to do was get it inbounded. Now, it wasn't going to be quite over yet because Effingham was going to, I mean, what they thought was the ideal situation was they would foul quickly, put Centralia on the line, and Centralia did not shoot free throws well that night. Effingham
Right?
didn't
Yeah,
shoot free
yeah.
throws well that night either. But
That's what you're banking on: 2 misses or 1 make and a 3, and we get to go to another overtime.
yeah, I mean that's the hope, but instead Centralia throws away the inbound. They throw it to midcourt. The girl just throws it to nobody in particular. Bella Austin comes and picks it off, throws it down to boy. Now I get in the middle of this and names escape me. The sophomore, Alyssa Martin. I'm sorry, Alyssa.
Yes.
And she hits the layup, and all of a sudden you're tied and you're going to double overtime, and the
Right.
Lady Hearts hold on and win it. But man, yeah, it should have been over. I think everybody in the gym thought that it was 5 seconds away from being
Right. So not having any eyes on it, relying on you and Matt. So you got to tell me if this, I mean, it sounded like the girl just said, "I'm not going to get a 5 count," and just chucked it.
basically. Mm-hmm.
And then all the Centralia girls were running that direction, and she intercepted it. And then there was like Martin all alone there in the basket, and just gave it to her, and she made the layup.
Not completely all alone. There was at least one Centralia player around her, but she more or less had an open path to the basket.
Okay.
Effingham's girls in that game, I think they had a lead late in the fourth quarter, and I think they kind of showed you that they're still young. Okay, like there's basically Olivia Moser's the only senior left. Riley Hodge is, as far as I could tell, not going to be available anymore. She had there was a, I don't know how much I can say. I don't know. There was
Lower body injury.
She upper.
Oh,
Yeah. But still kind of trying to shake that off. She wasn't there at Salem.
Yeah. Well, she's not even in attendance. Then she's
Yeah,
got a
doctors.
few days to get out
Yeah,
of that.
doctor said they wanted her not to travel. So,
Okay.
yeah, the point is they made some they did some
Kind of
things down the
mistakes.
stretch of that game that a more experienced, more veteran team, I don't think would have done. In particular, with a 3-point lead and regulation drawing to a close, you break Centralia's press, and you know that you want to kill clock, but if you have a wide open layup in front of you, go ahead and take it. Instead, you try to pass it out to somebody, it gets stolen, and it's a 3-point play on the other end of the floor. And what should have been icing on the cake all of a sudden turns into 2 overtimes. So
Right.
it's just little things like that. But again, it's easy for me to say. I'm just watching the game.
You're
I'm not.
sitting up there with your bag of Twizzlers and your Diet Dr. Pepper watching the game.
I had a Dr. Pepper Zero, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's listen, there's two edges to that sword, because that means that all these kids that were a part of that, for the most part, with the exception of Olivia Moser, they're going to be back next year, and they're going to have sectional experience no matter what happens against Mount Vernon Tuesday night and beyond. They will have played, in a tight regional championship game. They survived.
And it's different, Whitey. I'm just going to tell you right now, NTC championship, regional championship, whatever tournament you're in, regional championship, no comparison. Now you make it a sectional championship, no comparison. Regional championship, sectional championship, different animal. Completely different animal.
Yeah, and listen, they're going to have their hands full. They're going to play Mount Vernon Tuesday night. But listen, it's on your home floor. Effingham is hosting a sectional, okay? So there's 1 point in your favor. Another point in your favor is it's not going to be the first time that you've seen Mount Vernon.
They've already beat them, haven't they? Didn't they beat
They
them?
beat them at Mount Vernon. Now, they beat them by 2 points. So it's not like it's not like you're going to be like, oh, we got this under control. But at least there's no surprises. You have good hands-on experience. It's not just film. You've played that team, and yet they're one of the 28 wins on your record, and Effingham is 28-4 now. And you're not going to bet. Is 28-4 right? Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, 28-4. So, we'll see.
Who are the other 2 teams there, Whitey?
Yeah, so Mount Vernon had to beat East St. Louis on Saturday, as it turns out. They didn't get that regional championship played until Saturday.
I'm sure Jeff Schaefer was in attendance.
I'm sure he was too. But also at the Effingham sectional, it would help if I didn't pull up the boys basketball if I went with girls basketball.
We're going to talk about that next.
Yeah, we will talk about that next. But at the Effingham sectional, you've got Highland and Heron. They're going to play the first game Tuesday night. And Highland's good. I watched Highland play Effingham and beat Effingham. That's one of the 4 losses. So I don't know anything about Heron, but they're a 2 seed along with Effingham. So you got the top 4 seeds in the sectional all there. So that much.
It all went according to Hoyle.
Yes. So and why wouldn't you? You're going to have your hands full. I mean, basically in 3A, from a regional championship on, you have to understand, like, no matter how you compare to that team that you're playing, there's a chance you're going to lose. And even if you play well, you might lose. And that's where we're at now. I mean,
and if you're a team that runs and guns and runs up the score, usually not going to have that luxury, because the possessions are fewer in the postseason. Sectional possessions, in my opinion, are fewer than the regionals.
And that's a thing, again, with Jeff's team. I do think they get in a little bit of a hurry sometimes. Take some quicker shots than they might need to in the situation, in a late game lead situation. But there's, again, like, some coaches' philosophy in that situation is, why would I do anything differently than what got me to this late lead in the first place? But
and it sounded like they took maybe an ill-advised 3 he wasn't very happy with late.
Yeah, no, I think there were a couple of probably late 3-pointers that they were open, but you didn't need them. You were ahead, right? You didn't need them.
Right.
So, that's the nice thing, though. Again, is that it's on your home floor. You
Right.
survived that Centralia game. And listen, we were talking last week like it was going to be Bethalto that Effingham played. And so that just kind of goes to show you that anything can happen. And
Well,
that
it
was
sounded like
against
Centralia's
Centralia.
really improved. It sounded like those two girls they had were pretty good.
Well, and Centralia had one girl that scored all the points in the first half. And Matt and I kind of talked off the air at one point during the broadcast, like, they're just going to have to sell out a little bit and double this girl and leave one of, there were a couple of different girls that just, I think if you'd given them 20 shots, they might not have made one. It's just the way it was looking that night. And so, and you've employed that strategy before to great effect. And I thought they were going to have to do that. But then the other girl for Centralia, who actually was their leading scorer throughout the season, came alive in the second half, and so that sort of blew that theory. But then the first girl we talked about fouled out, and so that kind of gave Effingham a little less to have to think about in the second overtime.
Right.
So there's that. That's not the only regional champion that we had in the area, though.
Well, let's go 3A. Let's go to 2A now.
Yeah, and again, we talked about this last week, but that Effingham game was the only one that our stations had a chance to
Right.
broadcast because of the NASCAR obligations that we had. So obviously, we didn't have eyes on the 1A or 2A games. As far as 2A goes, T-Town, the girls were able to hold off Mount Carmel in the championship game down at Lawrenceville.
In Mount Carmel season yet again.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of Mount Carmel in
A
their
big girl who had soft hands.
yeah, I watched a little bit of their game against Cumberland, and I came away from it thinking, I just think that Lori and the girls they're gonna win this comfortably, and that's not how it went. They did win, but
They were down 10 early.
yeah, it took some late heroics, as it turns out.
It's
It was
Molly Ruhall, and I happened to see, courtesy of T-Rep's videos, I
mhm.
saw her bury a three baseline, and I saw an interview with Lori. They had a play set, and Molly was kind of option two out of the play, and Mount Carmel took away option one, and by gosh, she was wide open and pulled the trigger and nothing but net.
Yeah, and I mean, just that's huge for any number of reasons. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, it
if
is.
you go back to our conversation with Lori at the beginning of the season, she wasn't sure who she was going to have to take and make that shot for her.
Right.
And listen, Molly's the third leading scorer on this team, but she's definitely had big games this season. And
Yeah.
and again, it's not so much about total output, it's about the willingness and the ability
Take the shot.
to do that. Yes. To know that I want to be shooting it now. And you can't coach that. Kids either
You have
have
some people, Whitey, who would have caught that pass, shot fake nobody, put it on the floor, and look to give it up to somebody else. Trust me, I've
Mhm.
seen it happen. Not every kid on your team is willing to take the big shot, especially if you're down one. So it's kudos to them. They battled back. They hit some threes. I think I read the box score. They hit 8 threes.
Yeah.
Kind of offset Mount Carmel's size and size. Because Mount Carmel, well, I think had two big girls inside, both over 6 foot.
Can I backtrack a minute? Because when I talked about Effingham winning a regional, what I didn't mention was that 5 Apollo Conference teams played for regional championships over
There
the
you go.
weekend, and 3 of them won. And again, we mentioned Mount Zion winning one. They're going to play Chatham Glenwood, which is the team that knocked off Taylorville in a regional championship. So we could have had a Mount Zion Taylorville game there. But then also you had Mattoon. They lost to Highland
Yeah.
in a regional championship. But Mahomet Seymour got a regional championship. And this is interesting. And I don't know I don't know anything about it, but I know that Mahomet is on their third coach this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
The
They
guy that
lost
they
the
started
coach.
the
They put an
season with,
interim person in, and the interim person maybe lasted one game.
I think she might have lasted a little bit longer than that, but she described it. The story I read, I mean, I forget the exact words, but
Yeah,
she
she was
said it's a
quoted as saying she just had to get out of a toxic situation.
toxic situation. Yeah.
Kind of like our relationship.
I I watched Muhammad and St. Anthony play on video at the Mattoon holiday tournament. And at that point, St. Anthony was thumping them. And they're all I know is that their coach was still very vocal. And this was the first coach that they were on at this point. And they had some fans also that had to be told by an administrator to settle down a little bit. So it did seem, even at that time, like there were some things going on there that were
Things
not,
were going off the rails early.
yeah, not great. But listen, and it's understandable that there'd be some frustration because Muhammad's been a really good team for the last couple of years. And this season, winning that regional gets them to 14 and 19. Okay. They finished fifth in the Apollo ahead of only Charleston. And so, it's not what they're used to, but
Right. I may have to reach out to my old buddy, Mr. Hensley, and at some point this summer, I'll run into him somewhere and I'll just say, hey, tell me a story.
The person who's coaching them now, I forget the name, but he's an administrator there now, but had been a boys
That's the boys coach, Chad.
Yeah.
Chad.
See,
can't remember.
This is why I wasn't even going to try to remember because
that's okay.
It wasn't going to pop into my head. But
His
anyway,
name was Chad, huh?
So three.
He was the boys coach.
3 Apollo Benedict, is that right?
Chad Benedict. I think he went from Chrisman to Muhammad. Good guy, real good.
But you still got 3 Apollo teams alive. 2 of them are in the Decatur MacArthur sectional, and then of course Effingham in their own. So there's that. As far as the T-Town girls go, getting back to that, they're going to be what? They're going to be in the
north, don't they?
Yeah, they're going to, Newton's got a sectional, and
that's right. So they're just going to do. Okay.
Yeah, so they're going to play Maroa Forsyth on Tuesday night. The other side of that is Robinson and Paris. Now Robinson's a 1 seed. I don't. Maroa's a 1 seed, and then T-Town and Paris are both 3 seeds. Now
Paris kind of struggled early in the year, haven't they?
Yeah, Paris is definitely not the same Paris that it has been.
Right.
Now they still have managed to win 21 games. They're 21 and 11. But you look at their schedule and you will see that they lost to T-Town. They lost to Effingham. They lost to Robinson, as a matter of fact. Robinson is 25 and 5. So
Robinson was at that sectional last year at Pana.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they played, I forget who they played because Pana beat T-Town in the first semifinal doubleheader, and we were there a little bit watching it because Greg had to wait on a phone call. Mm-hmm. And their girls' sectional lights were too bright for them. They had trouble getting the ball off the court.
Yeah, Robinson last year.
Well, they've learned.
Yeah, I mean it seems like they're pretty solid. Last year they had their season. Well, they lost to Paris. Yeah, they lost to Paris in their last game of the year.
That's what it was. Paris beat them in the sectional. Yep. And then Paris and Payne played.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. So 1A, then we got 2 local teams alive in the 1A girls picture. St. Anthony and Altamont were both regional champions. I thought that it was, what I found interesting about it most of all was that St. Anthony won its own regional, and they beat Windsor Stew Straws in the championship game there.
Beat them by 7, right?
Yeah, beat them 50-43. Now, listen, Windsor Stew Straws won 20 games this year. It's as good a year as maybe
they probably had in a while. Sure.
But I'd seen them this year, and I didn't consider them a team that was going to play St. Anthony that tight.
I don't know details, but I kind of got the impression Windsor may have junked it up a lot and done a lot of different things during the game that give St. Anthony fits.
All I know is that when they played back in November, and again, it was back in November on the 30th, St. Anthony beat them by 24 points.
Right.
And that was the last game before Ruhal had to miss a few. So,
right. But that's also is a negative for you when you're playing someone you've already beat handily.
And looking even further, St. Anthony beat them in the NTC tournament by almost 40. So,
Yeah.
This time around, it was a tighter game. But the thing that jumped out to me a little bit was that they got the usual output, the leading output from Ruhal and Vonderheide, but Addie Nuxall jumped in there and got him 12 points in that game. And when you score 50, 12 points is a pretty significant.
Yeah, that's a big contribution.
Windsor Stew Straws is going to continue to be solid. I think they lose the Kinkler girl, who's a 1,000-point scorer, but they'll have the Hayes sisters back. They'll have the Wittenberg girl back, and apparently Ellie Wittenberg, who will be a senior next year, she's got a sister who's a freshman who is a very, very good ball player. So keep an eye on them. But St. Anthony had to work for it a little bit. I don't have a lot more detail than that since we couldn't be there for it, but they do advance, and that's what you expected. And you expected Altamont to advance out of that Dieterich regional, but they had to work for it too. In fact, they were losing after 3 quarters against Decatur St. Teresa.
St. Teresa, yeah.
And ended up winning by 8. But again, I would have to see video of it. But I watched Altamont in their semifinal against Neoga over at Dieterich. And in the second half, I think Craig basically had to tell Grace Nelson, listen, you're going to have to take this game over, right? Like, I know that you're an unselfish player, but I might need you to take this thing over a little bit.
Didn't she have a run of like so many points in a row in that fourth quarter?
Yeah, I don't know. She scored 35 of their 53 points in that Neoga game, and I don't know about the St. Teresa game. And by the way, I should say I got something a little bit wrong last week. I mentioned that she had banged up her knee a little bit, tweaked her knee. That was not in the Father McGivney game. They actually played Paris later on that week, and that's
where she got tweaked.
That's when it happened. And I think when you've had a thing like that happen to you, you could probably be a little skittish, and I think maybe it scared her. But I know they were a little worried about it in the moment, like, is this going to be it or not? But she looked. I think she's fighting it. I don't think she's 100%, but she looked very good against Neoga. And they need her. Listen, as good as I think everybody else on that Altamont team has gotten from last year to this year, they're going to need her to do special things if they want to keep advancing, because now they're going to play Tuscola again. Okay.
And they beat Tuscola though, didn't they?
They did beat Tuscola. They beat Tuscola on their home floor. So yeah, Tuesday night, both St. Anthony and Altamont will be playing on opposite sides of the bracket in the Central A&M sectional. St. Anthony will play a Salt Fork team. I don't know anything about Salt Fork other than they beat a Arcola team that I thought was all right, but not fantastic. Which I actually have seen. I've seen that Arcola team play a couple of times. So that's who St. Anthony will play, and then Tuscola and Altamont will rematch. And again, Tuscola is a 1 seed, Altamont's a 2 seed, despite the head-to-head thing there. But Tuscola, I have asked around to some people whose opinions I trust, and I said, is this Tuscola team as good as they've been the last couple of years? And they think so. They think yes. I mean, they think that this is, and that's interesting to me because they graduated a very good player off of last year's team. But in the older Boyer girl. But yeah, I don't know. It seems that that's gonna. I'm curious. Altamont did beat Tuscola on their home floor in the NTC CIC shootout. That was, it's been a few weeks, right? Like, they beat them by 1 point on January 13th. In the meantime, that same Tuscola team hosted St. Anthony, a couple weeks ago and beat them by 16 points. So, I think it's a sectional, so obviously it's going to be difficult.
Last year, didn't St. Anthony beat Tuscola right before the postseason started?
And then turned around and
it was the opposite.
Yep.
I just, I have flashes where I remember things.
So I guess that kind of goes to show you that we shouldn't put too much stock in what happened in the regular season, even if it's kind of recent history, because again, the sectional is just a different animal. I will say the venue is going to be interesting to me because Casey has I mean, Casey's an interesting venue. It's a cool old gym, but it's big, it's spacious.
The girls are at Casey?
No, no, but what I'm saying is last year it was in Casey.
Okay,
This year it's in Mowequa. It's at Central A&M, and
right.
that's a small gym, and it's gonna get loud in there. It's gonna be packed, and you're gonna feel like everything's on top of you a little bit in there, I think. And
It's gonna be tough for them to do the double header. That means they got to clear the gym completely.
I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised to see it as a sectional site, honestly. But I've seen smaller gyms get sectionals, especially on the girls' side. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that South Central hosted a girls' sectional. So
Remember 20 some years ago, Dieterich got on a regional and everybody complained and it didn't sell out. So
yeah, but it'll be an interesting atmosphere. And again, I don't know a lot about the Salt Fork team. I'm going to look up their max preps at least right now. But they 26-5. They ran the table in their conference, Vermilion Valley. Don't know much about that. I don't have anything very smart to say about them because I just don't know. But it would appear that both St. Anthony and Altamont are going to have their hands very full in the sectional semifinals. But the hope, from our perspective, of course, is that
get them in a final.
yeah, get them through it and get them to play each other for a third time this year.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Altamont won the regular season game. St. Anthony won the NTC Girls Championship, the tournament championship, and so you want them to get a rubber match. It's not going to be easy, but certainly they can do it, and that's what the hope is. And Matt and I will have both of those games Tuesday on the radio. You and Greg Sapp are going to be at Effingham High School there for the
Effingham and Mount Vernon.
That's the problem. Even once you get to sectionals, we got 4 local teams to cover and only 2 stations to do it. So somebody was going to be the odd man out, and it makes too much sense to be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone down in Mowequa, and then obviously you cover Effingham because that's a city school. So yeah, it's fun that they're all still alive, but I did kind of think that they would all make it. The only as far as other local schools that played in regional championships for the girls, you had St. Elmo Brownstown lose by 2 points to Father McGivney in a regional championship.
Read the story on that out of the whatever paper over there. It may have been the Belleville paper. McGivney kind of got a little bit of lead, but Brownstown hung around, and the usual subjects, the Hazlitt girl and who's the other girl? The
Seba.
They hit big buckets, and then it was like the game was over, and Father McGivney made a couple mistakes, and Brownstown actually down 2 and had a shot to win the game. Hazlitt had as the story said, a very contested 3 to win the game. So I'm sure it was just a throw up and a prayer, but you give them credit. That's a program that's going to see a lot of success, and they play for a regional championship now, so they've been in that moment.
Seaball is going to graduate, and that's a significant loss for them. But I'm just going to say right now, like you look at the top of the NTC standings next year, and I don't know the exact order, but you're going to see Brownstown and St. Anthony right up there toward the top again next year. That's my prediction. I don't know how it'll shake out between them. We'll have to see what St. Anthony does without Vonderheide, but they'll still have Ruhal and kids. Who knows what kids do in the offseason to progress? That's hard.
They got some good young big girls who can develop. So they could. I mean, it's going to kind of be a different team.
But my point is that Brownstown St. Elmo finished 4-4 in league play this year. They tied with Neoga, but they beat Neoga heads up. So 4th place in the conference. They lost a game to CHBC. They probably feel like maybe they shouldn't have, or else they would have been top 3 already. But they're going to be there toward the top again. Altamont, we'll see. Losing Nelson is going to be a lot to deal with, but they're a winning culture at this point, and so a lot of good things can happen there. But the only other NTC team that was playing for a regional championship was South Central, and they ran into Oakville and lost by 38. Oakville went to state last year, and they're number 1 seed here, probably looking for a return trip to the 1A state tournament. So there you go. St. Anthony, Altamont still alive in 1A, and we will continue to track everybody's progress. And as far as boys go, we previewed boys regionals last week. We just talked with Aaron about it this week. So
talk a little bit about the Altamont St. Anthony game.
Yeah, we definitely should. We'll get to that. And again, that gave St. Anthony won that game tightly, but just to kind of put a bow on the NTC before we discuss that, there was an interesting game that happened yesterday, as it turns out. Got postponed from Friday to Saturday because of the weather, but CHBC defeated St. Elmo Brownstown by 6 points, which gave Cowden Herrick a piece of the Egyptian Illini regular season championship, because they're dual conference teams along with St. Elmo Brownstown, but also it got them to 4-4 in league play, tied with St. Elmo Brownstown. So you give them the bump. Well, that gets them up to 4th place in the final league standings. And so, I kind of shouted out Tanner Thompson and the Bobcats last week, and I know he's either a viewer or he caught wind of it, but he reached out to me. So, thanks to either him or whoever put him onto it. But congratulations to them again. They're 15-16. And again, like I said last week, like, some programs will look at that and say, well, so what? But for them, that's, since they've consolidated, I think that's the most games they've won, and again, they got a kid on the all tournament team at the NTC. They beat a rival in St. Elmo Brownstown, which has got 21 victories, although St. Elmo Brownstown kind of limping into the postseason a little bit. Not playing, didn't seem like they're playing their best ball. You hope for their sakes they turn around, but just wanted to sort of mention that. But yeah, St. Anthony and Altamont played Tuesday night, and that was still for a piece of the NTC regular season title, because Altamont could have theoretically beaten St. Anthony and then beaten Windsor Stew Straws and gotten to 7-1. If St. Anthony had lost that, they would have been 7-1, and they would have had to share the league tournament title or league regular season title. But going into it, you knew, like we mentioned when we talked to Aaron Britton earlier in the show, that Altamont was already missing Dylan Elam. They were going to be missing Eli Miller, who has been starting for them. They were going to be missing Ben Radel off the bench. He doesn't score a lot, but he's an experienced player off the bench. And I was just thinking, man, this could be ugly. Like, I thought that Altamont at full strength was going to have to play some of their very best ball to win that game. And the fact of the matter is, they gave St. Anthony everything they wanted, with the likes of Parker Bell and Zane Miller, a couple of freshmen who have scored a grand total of 7 points on the varsity floor this season, coming off the bench and giving them substantial minutes. I mean,
yes.
I think I don't watch every Altamont game, obviously, but I cannot imagine that John Nieberge has coached many better games than that one over the time he's been at Altamont. That's really just did a great job with what he had.
Well, his approach, he just decided, he put the McMahon away kid on Ryan Schmidt, don't leave him.
And that worked.
And it just got St. Anthony out of rhythm. The thing was, two things. Altamont struggled in the first half against pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Turned it over.
They turned it over a bunch. Against the press. Brock Faraday's got such great hands when he traps, and he doesn't really try to physically rip the ball away from you, but he deflects a lot of passes when he's double teaming and when he's trapping. And I felt like St. Anthony didn't apply as much pressure in the second half as they did the first half. Mm-hmm. Now, they may have early, and Altamont kind of handled it, but it was I remember exactly how that part of it went. But St. Anthony didn't shoot it well. No.
Brock Faraday since the semifinals of the NTC really hasn't shot it well. Colin Wessendorf was missing some open, you just see there were times he'd get an open look and the crowd was like, what?
Yeah. So let me throw something at you on that conversation, because Colin lost his footing a couple of times early.
Yeah, he did. He went down that same spot on the floor twice.
And it felt like he lost a little bit of his mojo after that. Like he didn't.
I know what you're saying. I think as much as anything, confidence. He just looked at times like he was wishing the ball in the hole instead of that kid who's just like, bang, it's gone, it's in. And Faraday, there was an instance he got a ball, kind of dribble penetration, pulled up, little 12-foot jumper, airballed it.
Yeah.
And it was just, there were some very uncharacteristic results on some shots they were getting. And Altamont, I'll tell you what, that fourth quarter, those kids showed no conscience whatsoever. I got an open three, bang, and they hit him, and they hit him, and they had a great look to send it into overtime.
Caden Davis
had a great look.
Yep. He made a couple, Aiden McManaway made a couple.
Yeah,
and listen, and I said this on the radio and I'll say it now, but the reason that it's noteworthy and the reason that I bring up Brock Faraday not hitting shots is not because I don't like Brock Faraday. In fact, it is much the opposite. It's because I think he's such a good shooter that it's so weird to me to see
I agree 100%.
open looks.
I agree 100%. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize.
Yeah.
It's like he's in a fog offensively, because there's times he'll make that nice little penetration spin move, go up from 6 feet off the glass, and it rims out. It's not like, oh my God, he's throwing it up in the rafters, but he's that momentum. And Wessendorf, and it's the same thing. Colin's been the kid that when he's open, gets that open three, he buries it. And so I don't know. The one thing I did like, 2 big baskets in the end of that game in that fourth quarter. Ryan Schmidt was used as a screener. McManaway was told, do not help. Faraday came off the screen. Nobody there.
Yeah, and right after Altamont had taken the lead, right?
He came right back down and got a bucket. And I would have liked to have seen variations of that early. When it was apparent what they were doing. But I was and it was good to see Brockton knock down those 2 shots. And Hatton got a big offensive rebound. Seems like he does every game. He got a big one. But no, very good ball game. I had the old Hall of Famer there with me. He got to sit perched up in the VIP section and watch the game.
McManaway, really enjoyed watching him play defense. It's hard for me trying to keep a book to watch those off the ball stuff, but I tried as much as I could to watch him and Ryan Schmidt, playing against each other, even when the ball was on the other side of the floor. And I don't know how maybe they're buddies away from the court. I don't know, but boy, it was an intense battle between them.
And it never got chippy between them. They were banging on each other. And the McManaway kids, he's big enough, he's strong enough, and he's quick enough to give Ryan fits. You can't just say, all right, Sparky, you're going to do that. Well, you're 5'7" and you're not real tough, but you're quick. Ryan's going to eat you for breakfast.
Yeah, McManaway
was physically tough enough. Yeah, he does. He's got probably a longer reach than he should. And but I've noticed that in him. Johnny's used him a little bit in defensive situations when I've seen him play off and on in the last couple of years. But no, he did a great job. And John's plan was spot on. And they had their chance.
Yeah, they lost by 4, but they, like we said, had a late lead. Gave themselves an opportunity to go up even later. They had a good look. And he said that wasn't exactly how he drew it up, but that's basically what they wanted. They wanted to skip it over there and find the man open in the corner. They, St. Anthony's defense take a few things away from you, but they got what they needed and won St. Anthony had to win a low scoring 41-37 game. And I'm sure that's not at all what St. Anthony was thinking about. You know, they were not thinking about that before the game, like having to survive a defensive battle.
I think what they showed and should show people who just see a score, well, they're slipping. They showed they can roll up their sleeves and get in the mud and win a game that way. They can grind one out. And that's what they had to do.
Yeah.
So again, I think that only adds to, their resume. Yeah, it was a win over Altamont. Altamont was shorthanded. They should have won by more. No, that was just good old fashioned street fight. And in the end, they came out ahead.
Yeah, and in all our talk about Faraday, he still scored 16 points. He scored more points than anybody.
A lot of them were layups against when he got steals in the press.
Yep. He got 16. Schmidt got 14. But other than that, Hatton got 6. And and again, I've talked ad nauseum about Hatton and the things we like about him. He does. I mean, that's what he's going to get you. He's going to get you. He had like 4 offensive rebounds and a couple of stick backs. He'll affect some shots too, things that don't show up in the box score. But kids will drive into the basket and realize that there's this 6'4" kid with long arms in front of them, and they might still put the shot up, but not the way they wanted to.
No, you're exactly right.
St. Anthony. I mean, they've had to battle a little bit. They had to battle against Nokomis at the NTCCIC shootout. Aaron talked about that a little bit. Won by 13 points, 43-30, another low scoring game. But the fact of the matter is they haven't lost. They haven't lost since the last game of the Christmas tournament. They lost to Highland by 3 points on December 30th.
And a nice fight, but that's the thing. Highland is more physical, more aggressive than anyone they've played. So when they get in these types of games, they've been in them.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Highland game paid some dividends in the way that
Who else beat him at Christmas, Whitey? What was their other loss?
At Christmas, the other loss for St. Anthony was
Centennial. And they're not going to play a team quicker than Centennial at any point.
Yeah. So there you go. They that's why you play those tournaments. And St. Anthony, I mean, it helps that Altamont and Dieterich were both very good, and St. Elmo Brownstown pretty good too in the national trail. So your conference opponents give you some good built-in, baked-in games on your schedule.
They pushed you some, yeah, sure.
But they go out and they'll play anybody, and for the most part, those teams will play them too, and they go into the postseason battle tested. Their regional is theirs to lose. I mean, they're a heavy favorite in it, and they should be. Altamont, it'll be interesting to see, if they can get the guys back that were just, Dylan Elam's not coming back. I think probably they could get him out there if they had to, is kind of the sound of it. It's a tendonitis in his knee, and he plays baseball, and that's you
just don't know that he would even be in game condition because there's a lot of things he hasn't been able to do.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, I think at this point, if he wants to be able to contribute to baseball, then he just needs to give it some rest. And again, like, what could you run the risk of him really screwing it up if he keeps playing? And for what contribution can he make? I don't know. So but you hope that they'll get the couple of other guys back, and they can still put together a run. And listen, they showed you that they got plenty of guts. Okay, they're not lacking in that department, and that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't catch me off guard at all. But they'll, we'll see how it all goes. Just as far as other games this last week,
Shoes lost at Olney, and they had 2 games, didn't they?
Yeah, they lost by 5 at Olney Thursday night. They defeated Mattoon on senior night, Tuesday night, by 12, and Mattoon's a good win. Mattoon's. I like their coach a lot, and I hope he sticks around for a while. He's a guy, but I think he's doing good things with them. And that's a good win for T-Town. Got them up to 20 on the year, so they're 20 and
That's
10.
a magic number.
Yep. And again, playing one of the toughest schedules in 2A. Okay.
Sure.
So could they tone it down a little bit and be 25 and 5 instead? Yeah, sure. But
But then does that hurt you on the back end?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, you some of those losses, Mount Zion, Tolono Unity,
Centralia.
Albany, those are those are tough teams, those are teams that'll make you, those are games that'll make you better, so yeah, they split. I don't have a lot of other information.
I think
I
him
know,
wrapped up with Mount Zion.
Garrett Gaddis did drop 29 points on senior night against Mattoon, so that's
Nice.
good to see him have that kind of a game.
Yep.
They're gonna, but Joey Nieberge was the leading scorer against Albany, and really Garrett Gaddis is going to be, he's going to be the focal point of whoever you play coming down the section. So you need guys like Joey to step up, and Austin Blummer scored 7 points in that Albany game also. So I know you want to see Austin Blummer do something down the stretch. I know you like the kid.
I like his whole makeup. He's big, strong, got a soft little jump hook. I think that just poses problems for people. I really do.
We'll see. There's very good possibility that you're going to get that T-Town Newton rematch for a regional championship down in Newton. And
I may get to do that game.
Yeah, that'll be, if that comes to fruition, that'll be a fun one. It really will. It really will. And yeah, Effingham closed out. They had Mount Zion come in Thursday night, and honestly, knowing nothing else, 76-53. I mean,
I was told they played. Actually, they played pretty well. I mean, Mount Zion's Mount Zion. Now,
sure.
The person I talked to thought Mount Zion was missing a kid. I don't know, but I do know that they said Effingham played, battled and played with confidence.
As loaded as Mount Zion is, missing one.
Yeah, you can miss a kid and be okay.
Yeah, they're 30-1 on the year.
Was it Metamora? I think is their only loss.
Yeah, Metamora, and that was a good ball game as I recall.
Yeah, Metamora's ranked, I think, number 1 in 3A. Them or DePaul Prep.
Yeah, Metamora beat them by 3 points. So that's the only thing that stands between the Braves and being undefeated right now.
Peter MacArthur's pretty good too. They're going to run into him in the postseason.
Yeah, Mount Zion. Yeah, they're in that. Mount Zion goes to Danville for their regional. Effingham goes to Charleston, so they don't have far to go. But again, they'll be playing a Charleston team that's they've seen 3 times and haven't beaten any of those 3 times. But Charleston's not. I don't think Charleston's like. They're not. They're 12-19, right? Like there's an opportunity if you play well to really make them them sweat or possibly knock them off. And Obie's kids play hard. I'll say it. I've said it a million times, and it's not just lip service. I'm not just saying it because I got to think of something nice to say about them because they're a local team. I truly do mean it. I have had as much fun watching them play as I think you could a 3-28 team because the boys go out there and bust their asses every night. They don't play like a team that's given up on anything, right? Like they're out there working their tails off. I think that's the biggest compliment you can give them, really, because it's a tough season, and it would have been very easy to say the hell with it, and they didn't. So,
well, Whitey, next week we will hopefully have some sectional champions to talk about.
That's the hope,
and some regional champions to talk about.
I have very little doubt in my mind that we will have regional champions to talk about on the boys' side of things. I think we're gonna have multiple. I really do. I call me a pie in the sky. Call me a homer, but I think
so because that means then you don't get a chance to talk about sectional champs if you don't have regional champs.
Yeah, no.
See how I did that?
but I really, St. Anthony, I just, something would have to go terribly wrong for them not to win that.
Well, I just want to see them kind of get out of this little shooting funk. They've gotten themselves into a little bit, and just relax and play because they're a very talented team. Somebody asked me, how good are they? And I said, they're really good. They are.
Altamont, Altamont's got its own regional. And listen, St. Elmo would be, or no, Weber Township is in there. I don't know enough about Weber Township to speak real intelligently on them, but I just, I like the way Altamont's playing right now.
I think you can get out of the Altamont regional with an NTC. I think St. Anthony can come out as an NTC champ, and I also think Dieterich. So I really think that St. Anthony sectional, you've got a really good opportunity to have that as an NTC tournament part deux,
with
and then
Tuscola
maybe have Tuscola crashing the party. And I don't think any of those three teams like them, so that'd be fine.
Yeah, and maybe Casey does something and knocks off a Tuscola. I don't think Tuscola is infallible, and we'll see. But yeah,
I've only seen them once, saw them play T-Town, and I was impressed. I was impressed as much with their big kid inside.
Mm-hmm.
He's quick. He can play, and they quit going to him for a while.
So Mike, we've been going for an hour and a half.
We're closing in on a new record, buddy.
We really need to stop, but I do just want to congratulate you and the rest of the Indiana men's basketball fan base on the wonderful uniforms they were wearing against Northwestern today. I know you'll be getting your own very shortly if you haven't already ordered it.
Oh, you got one ordering for me? Awesome. I need a new night shirt. Make sure it's big enough. I need a new night shirt.
Oh man,
that was disgusting.
Ugly uniforms.
I thought it was Northwestern in a shade of purple when I started watching the game.
I did say to you before we started recording, like, it's interesting that we've gotten to this point where, and probably for the first time in my life, where I look at an Indiana Northwestern game in Bloomington and say, yeah, Northwestern really ought to win that, and they did.
And they did.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else. I just wanted
to. Hey, Whitey, I had a chance to go today, but I had to speak for Catholic Charities at 3 masses today. So, and I forgot they played at 2. I probably could have made it, but I'm glad I didn't, because then we would have, I'd have been doing this show from I-70, and I'd have been mad.
Yeah, it's just not their year. Northwestern, I kind of like them. I don't know.
They're in the tournament. They're in the tournament.
Yeah, against some of my deep-seated inclinations, I do like Northwestern's basketball team.
They got a shot for a double bye. You gotta like Boo Booey, man. You just gotta like.
I was probably on record somewhere before this season is saying that Boo Booey really needs to think about just going out and finding himself a job. But I take it back now because he's having a wonderful season.
Don't think the guard back down into the post is going to carry over to the NBA?
Yeah, I'm not going to start singing his praises as a professional prospect just yet. But
I agree 100%.
But I do like him as a college player. I don't know how much I really like the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten might just. Some people say parity. I say maybe the league just stinks. I don't know.
Or mediocrity.
Yeah, mediocrity. I just don't listen. I know that teams that just fired their coaches sometimes get a little fire in their belly, but Ohio State winning against Purdue bothers me a little bit. I don't know that. And,
it should. I'll have to talk to my Purdue fans. I may send them a text tonight.
You guys can commiserate tonight.
Oh yeah. There will be. There's no commiserating. They can't match my commiserating.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, and best thing, Whitey, don't we have spring training games before our next show?
We might. Yeah, it seems like
maybe Friday or Saturday they start.
Yeah, it seems like we're getting there. Speaking of bad uniforms, man, MLB's catching some heat for so Fanatics does everything for them now. Like Nike designed the uniforms, but Fanatics produces them. And Fanatics is just garbage, and they're making the on-field uniforms, and there's been a lot of complaining about it from the players. They look bad to the from the camera perspective.
Don't they look kind of cheap?
Yeah, they were like, well, they don't fit right, and they're not customizable like they used to be. And
Did Fanatics hire George Costanza?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't
I
know,
just
but
wondered. It's
it's
cotton, baby. It's breathable.
yeah,
It's
like
breathable.
at a certain point, like trying to do everything in the cheapest way possible does end up having tangible effects on the final product. You do. It's Major League Baseball, for God's sake. You've got more, like, you got more money than God, okay? Like, just make
Yeah.
decent uniforms, okay?
It's like when you should be in your cream and crimson and you're wearing gray.
Yeah, it
With
was
red numbers. Greg Sapp would have been bitching because he couldn't see the
futuristic print. Well, listen, as a person who has had to call some Mount Zion football games in my life, I will say that, yeah, color on color is
Not good.
a crime against broadcasters.
The only thing worse than that is the girl with the ponytail hanging down in the middle of her numbers.
Yes, sir.
Come on,
yes, sir.
flat top. You don't have that issue.
Very difficult. All right, Mike, we're rambling. Let's get out of here.
All right. See you, Whitey.
All right. Hey, nestohoops.com. Check it out.
Yes. Aaron's
And-
awesome.
And if you're somebody who's an Aaron fan who's checking us out, give us a follow.
Yeah.
Subscribe on YouTube. Find us
We'll
on
get more views because when he
You
shares this on Facebook and on the X, it will
Yep.
we'll pick up new viewers.
Yep. We need guys like Aaron to pump us up a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
People who actually get a little respect around here. All right, Mike, we'll talk next week.
See you, bud.
Later.